Hey y'all, welcome back. This is Trey at TreyMixes.com. Real quick, before we get rolling, head over there and grab your free download if you want another set of instructional videos and an ebook on how to use saturation, which we've used a lot in this video series already. But just some extra tips and tricks, all free. Just head over there and get it. All right, back to what we're doing. We're back to mixing the song from start to finish. Thanks for hanging out watching the previous episodes up to this point. We've been working on drums, and we're going to wrap up working on drums today. Just 3 or 4 little things that I want to continue working on coming through these drums before we move on to the next thing. So after our gigantic video in the previous installment, we're going to keep it kind of short and keep moving. So just for frame of reference, we'll listen to a little bit of these drums we've been working on in the context of the mix without the vocals, because we've been working without them at the moment, and see where we're at. All right, so that's kind of where we're at the moment. And what I want to do is I'm going to do something I like to do on a lot of drums, is when I have room mics, which we do in this case, I want to compress the room mics. It's a real popular trick, and compressing the room mics can add a little bit of liveliness to your sound to kind of make the cymbals seem a little wider and get some extra life into these drums. And since these are electronic drums, to really give them a real sense that they're being played in the same room together, I'm going to use this trick and a little bit of the reverb track that was sent with it, and to make it sound more like a live kit instead of an electric kit. So we pulled up our compressor here. I like the FET compressors for drums. They just sound really good. So I picked the vintage FET circuitry on the stock Logic compressor, and I like to hammer these rooms kind of hard, so we're going to roll it up to 4. Let's see, I'm going to open our attack just a little bit so it doesn't clamp off the drums, and I always like to add a little bit of distortion. I'll show you what I mean. So here, let's just listen to these room tracks real quick without the compressor so you know what we're listening for. All right, so it's got a little bit heavy cymbals in there, and so we're going to kind of compress this and bring them down and kind of bring the rest of the kit up. So we're going to play it, and I'm going to adjust the threshold since I've got my 4:1 setting dialed in here, and kind of see how it affects it. Okay, here's no distortion. Adding a little bit of that hard distortion is not quite as brash and loud as the soft distortion. Check this out. No distortion. The soft distortion brings it out real loud and crisp, which is good for some things, but I'm going to use the hard one so it'll give it a little less brashness in the distortion sound, but it'll bring out the drum hits and kind of saturate the cymbals a little bit and even it out some for me. So one more time, we'll turn it off. Yeah, just a little bit more life in there. The attack's pretty good. It's not clamping off the drums too much, and the release is good. To me, this is keeping it to where it's kind of bouncing in rhythm with the track. Okay, adding ourselves a little bit of evenness to that. So again, with and without. Without. I'm going to add a little bit back into our output because we're a little low. All right, that same volume. So it just brings out a lot of life real fast. So we'll put this back in the context of the whole drums and see how this kind of livens up our drum mix. So check this out. Yeah, I like that. Livens it up a little bit. And while I'm listening to this, I hear those toms are a little boxy. So let's do a little bit of tom EQ. We got all our toms on one track here. I'm going to change my cycle to a smaller area that I can really hear what's happening in these guys. A little bit of ringing. The deep ringing I'm not worried about. There, it's close. There, a little bit of that. Oh. Okay. Pull a little bit of that out. Some more there. That's way more offensive. Let's try pulling that out and see if it keeps the low end we were just losing. Yeah, that's better. Better already. Pull some of that high-end roundness out of those tones. Get rid of a little of that and see if it doesn't clean it up for us. Sounds pretty good. Now, let's talk about our drum reverbs. A lot of times I will send out my drum mixes, but since the person who made this sent a drum reverb track with it, they probably like the sound of that reverb. And so let's do some playing with their reverb first and decide if it will work for us before we go doing extra work that we don't have to because we've already got this. Okay, first thing, you see in the reverb, we're getting a lot of extra kick reverb here. If it was big and boomy sounding kick drum in this reverb, what I would do is I would leave some of it because that reverb really adds some sound, but really this just sounds like someone's pushing air through the mic. And that's just going to muddy things up. So let's get rid of some of that. You sure don't want too much of it, but so turn it back down. But I hear a little bit more of that boxiness in here, so let's see if we can find it. That's ringing a little bit. Let's see if adding this shelf back. I almost never add a shelf to reverbs, but that kind of livens it up a little bit. And I usually will bust out a reverb before I start trying to notch out things. But that pop was really the only thing that was bothering me. So I'm going to notch it, and we're going to leave it like this. I kind of like it. Not usually what I normally would do, but I think it works here. Okay, really starting to sound like a full-blown kit. One thing though, because a lot of these cymbals have been kind of washy for us. They're nice, they're bright, they're loud, but I don't want them getting in the way of things like the singer. So let me turn back on the vocals, so maybe you can see what I'm talking about with these high frequencies and these cymbals. So when you hear right through, say, this section, this full groove, there's a lot of high-end information going on there. So what I will sometimes do to kind of duck them out rhythmically, let's put ourselves another compressor. We're going to put it on the overheads this time. And what I'm going to do is we're going to sidechain our entire compressor to the snare bus. And this should be, let me double check. Yes, bus 10 is the snare bus. And that means that the input of this compressor is not the tracks. It affects the overhead track, but the input telling the compressor to work is now our snare bus. So I'm going to use the snare, so when the snare hits, the cymbals will dip down just a little bit and come back up out of the way of the snare. And that will give us a little bit of clearance with these high frequencies just always pushing through and hopefully keep it from getting harsh. So let's listen to what we've got here. Okay, so you see that this is jumping with the snare, but it's affecting these overheads. So let's listen for reference. Okay, excuse me. It's one minor hang up. I made it the snare bus. We're going to change that to the snare top because this will function when the snare top is muted. It won't work like that with the bus because the bus isn't going to work unless there's stuff actually going through the bus at that moment. So with this soloed and just the snare top mic being our input, listen to how the cymbals are affected with this sidechain. You hear the volume drop in and out while the snare hits, so that gets it out of the way of the snare. We are also going to copy this setting over to our hi-hat, because that hi-hat does the same thing. It's really whooshy. So yeah, same thing. It's dipping the volume out every time the snare hits. So we will get a little less swishing through those hi-hats while the snare is playing. It's a real subtle thing, but when it pulls those to 10K frequencies out of the way of the snare, it is a good thing for us because it helps you focus on the groove and not on these piercing cymbals.
From the city, I'll make it through, prove it to you.
Also in the overheads, let's do ourselves a favor and get rid of all the drums and just keep our cymbals.
Follow me.
There, I'm going to try to minimize all those extra things in the overheads that we don't really need because we already have a room mic, we already have all the same drums and everything, and I just want the EQ and the compression to affect the overheads themselves. Good stuff, good stuff. What we can also do is one more thing I think I'm hearing. I want to EQ the kick because we finally worked ourselves all the way down from the bus all the way down here. And I'm just in the mix. We're getting a whole lot of click and not as much thump as I would like. We've improved the thump quite a bit from the word go. You can watch the previous video where we do a bunch of drum bus work. Helps that kick out a lot. It's just still not quite where I want it to be. And I don't know if there's frequencies being masked or what. So let's give our kick a listen. All right, there's our 60, there 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, where we've got our kick drum is really living right here. That's not doing anything. There, that's where our meat is. Well, here's a whole lot of extra box and click, and I want to get out of the middle of this thing because the compressor is still going to affect that sound. EQ on other things is going to affect that sound of it coming through the rooms or through the drum bus. So if we go ahead and get rid of it at the source, might affect it less. Sometimes with a shelf around 3 to 6K, let's check in here. You can really get that click to pop out. But we've got plenty of click, so let's adjust this in the mix. We'll turn the shelves back off. Sounds good in solo, but doesn't matter if it sounds good in solo. But we've got our shelves set up here, and we will see how this sounds as we go. Way too much.
I'll make it through. Follow me. Set me free. Trust me and we will escape from this.
Sometimes, since the bass notes tend to live, the best of the bass notes tend to live in this range, pulling them out a little bit can help the bass shine through a little bit. We're not quite to working on the bass yet, but preemptively, let's see if this helps us.
I'll make it through.
It does. Those bass notes kind of pop out a little bit more. So a lot of the bass notes that you're going to hear probably live in the 100 to 300 low mid range. And getting rid of some of those in the kick that aren't affecting our thump or our click are going to help those notes shine through a little bit better. Now, for the click part of this kick, let's have another listen.
One thing to do. I don't care what lies ahead. No time for guessing, follow my plan instead. Find that next stage no matter what that may be. Take my lead, I'll set you free. Follow me, set me free. Trust me and we will.
I think we're just going to leave that shelf alone because turning it down really dulled it up. Listen.
Escape from the city. I'll make it through. Follow me. Set me free.
It really just kind of disappears without the click at all. You can still feel it, but if we turn it up, it starts getting really, really clicky.
Trust me and we will escape from the city.
It's just too much like a pop cap gun. So
Your feelings gotta live and learn. I know it's something like that I'll make it through. Got no other options, only one thing to do. I don't care what lies ahead. No time for guessing, follow my plan instead. Find that next stage no matter what that may be. Take my lead, I'll set you free. Follow me, set me free. Trust me and we will escape from the city. I'll make it through. Follow me. Set me free. Trust me and we will escape from the city. I'll make it through. Prove it to you.
I think I just like it best like that. We've already got a high pass up here on the drum bus, getting rid of some of the frequency in the kit from 30 on down, so I'm not going to worry about that too much. I think that's going to do it for our drum sound at the moment. Again, mixing so reactive and there's no rules to any of this. But as I go, I may hear something else that I like. I may hear that maybe I have too much kick, maybe I have too much click in the kick or not enough, or maybe I need to do some more snare work as we go. But for right now, I feel like we're at a pretty good place with our kick drum and the rest of our kit as we go through this song. And so from here, we'll probably move forward. You don't want to sit too long on one thing because you'll just second guess it. You'll overwork yourself trying to figure it out. And it's just easier to work on it, go till you like it, move to the next thing. That's the big takeaway of advice from this. And you can always come back and fix it if there's a glaring problem that's just killing you. You can't stand it. So one more time, let's turn off everything we've done on our drums. We've selected them all. And I'm going to turn off these plugins. We'll listen, turn them on, turn them off, so you can just kind of hear everything we've done with our drums, including these sends, except it's going to turn that one on. So you know what? Let's get rid of this send for this. That's the old parallel drum send. So no problem there. All right, and we're going to start with it off, turn them on, turn them off, and everybody can hear.
I'll make it through. Prove it to you. Follow me. Oh yeah. Danger is lurking around every turn. Trust your feelings, gotta live and learn. I know it's something like that I'll make it through. Got no other options, only one thing to do. I don't
Yeah, makes a big difference. Yeah, there's obviously some volume increases, and our ears always tell us that volume up is better. But hopefully you could hear, you can always rewind and watch it again for a minute or two. The difference in the snap and the pop and the punch of the drums and the air and the cymbals and the width of the kit, the way it goes from feeling dull to feeling really lifelike, and it's not just from volume. So I think we're going to be done with drums for now, and we'll move on to the next thing that screams and yells that needs to get fixed. I think we'll work on the bass next. So again, thank you very much. Please like the video if you found something helpful. And all I'm asking for is a subscribe if you enjoyed it or found anything here of value. Everything I put up is free. So any extra subscribes and shares is a big deal for me. And I really appreciate your time watching this. Hopefully it was useful. And come back next week for more. Thank you.